Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Experts Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and I have with me an amazing soul, a great human being, heart centered entrepreneur, Miss Denise Thomas. I have known Denise for a few years now. She's been on my summits. We have networked together, we have collaborated on products together. And one of the things that I'm super excited about is the message that she brings, not only for parents and their pocketbooks, but also for the kids and the opportunities that is waiting for them. So, Denise, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show. I believe this might be actually the second show, so I'm very happy to have you back, if not before. And please tell us a little bit more about yourself. I know that you have a very amazing story, a personal story about how you got involved in all of this. So let's go through and dive into this important topic that really spells opportunity and hope for the next generation.
Thank you so much, Dr. L. And I will just reiterate, we have had the best friendship throughout our business relationship because we have a lot of the same values in common. And I think that's really important. That's one of the things that I try to assess when I'm meeting with potential new families to work with me, is to make sure we're on the same page, because it really is important in a good working relationship. I am known as the debt-free college coach. I help parents put their kids through college debt-free. But more than that, how if we can get your kid paid to college? It sounds like a pipe dream. And believe me, when it happened to my own kids, I was like floored. This is possible. This works, really? And it works over and over again. And that's the message that I want families to understand, is that no, you don't have to be a genius to win scholarships. You don't have to have perfect GPA or test scores. You don't have to be a college athlete. And by the way, college athletes don't get paid to go to college anymore. If they get a scholarship, it's a really small one. So there's a lot of myths that our families are believing that are keeping our kids in debt. And you ask, what is it that got me into this? In all honesty, it was desperation. I grew up in a family that did not have a lot of financial means. I didn't know it. I was, a kid, I'll be honest with you. Teenagers have no idea what their family finances are. None. As a teenager, you live in your own little world. You've got food on the table, roof over your head. You're good. Unless someone is telling you we're poor, we can't afford that all the time. You don't know that. If you want to play with such and such a video game, mom says, go down the street and play with Johnny's. She's not telling you we can't afford that. And that's how I grew up. I didn't know I was poor. I went to college on the Pell Grant. That's for low-income families. But I also had to work 3 jobs so that I could finish paying the rest of college. They don't tell you the Pell Grant doesn't cover everything. It covers very little. But I also had to lift food from the college cafeteria so that I could have something to eat on the weekends. My meal plan didn't cover weekends. It wasn't a struggle, as you might think. I felt of it more of as a game to be played. Can I make this work? Can I get away with carrying that piece of fried chicken in a paper cup without anybody knowing it, right? But fast forward, I've got my own family. My husband works in corporate. Everything's happy. We just finished building our dream home. Everything's awesome. And then he gets laid off. He got a job. Whew, I could breathe. 3 months later, he gets laid off again. Then the stock market crashed. And there are still a lot of people reeling from that last major crash that we had. We could not pay the bills. Money runs out a lot faster when you're paying a mortgage and you have no job. Mm-hmm. So within a few months, I realized we had no choice. We had been keeping up with everything. We had been paying everything on time, and then the money was just not there. We had just enough left to pay a bankruptcy attorney and buy a lawnmower and trailer and start mowing lawns to put food on the table. The bankruptcy was liquidation. That means if you could touch it, it is sold. I grew up having garage sales. I know what that is. This is something entirely different. This is having strangers come into your home and make an offer on the pot I'm cooking my dinner in. 3 months later, we're settled into a small apartment. The house went into foreclosure. And I'm suddenly remembering, wait a minute, my daughter's about to start high school. College is around the corner. How are we going to pay for this? We have no savings. We have no 401k to borrow against. We have no house to borrow equity from. Oh, at bankruptcy, that means we can't co-sign for the student loans everybody likes to talk about. So that took loans off the table for us. Now what do? I started doing the research, and what I found was that 70% of college students graduate with debt. And it starts anywhere from $5,000 to as many zeros as you want to put on it.
And currently we are having that whole debt crisis with the student loans that we're trying to forgive and forget. And it's a big mess in itself.
It is a mess, and it doesn't have to be. That's the problem. But what I figured out was that, wait a minute, I can do math. If 70% are graduating with student loans, that means 30% are graduating debt-free. What are they doing that the rest of us don't know about? What are we not being told? Because you see, Dr. L, these numbers don't change. It doesn't matter what the economy is doing. From one year to the next, the number stays the same. It is 70% to 30% all the time. So I started doing the research, and everyone is telling me, Denise, you're starting too early. Wait till junior year for that. Because that's what we're told. That's what we believe. That's what we've been told for decades. Wait till junior year to look into colleges, to take the SATs, to think about college. But in my research, I found that those who are graduating without the debt started so much earlier. Some as early as middle school. And they were doing things differently. Literally anything you imagine to be a thing, a belief that has to do with high school to college, 9 times out of 10, that's a myth. Right. It's not the reality that will help your child. It is, however, what everyone else is doing, because that's what we've been led to believe. But here's the deal. If you do what everyone else is doing, you're going to get what everyone else is getting, college debt. Mm-hmm. So in my research, I found several things that these kids had in common that were graduating debt-free. And no, they're not all geniuses. No, they're not all student athletes going to college on an athletic scholarship. They're not all brilliant geniuses or parents with a buttload of money. No. And oh, by the way, some of that is myths as well. You don't have to be a genius to win scholarships, and athletes don't get money anymore like they used to. Very few get any. So when I was looking through what these kids were actually doing, I made decisions for my own family that said, okay, if this thing reasonably sounds like something that might attribute toward college acceptance or winning scholarships, let's do that. I got time, right? I mean, why not? We weren't starting at the late end of things. We were starting early. So I put all of those things in place for my kids. Fast forward, my oldest is a junior in high school. She started applying for scholarships in spring of junior year. The first scholarship she applied to was a national scholarship for $10,000. She won.
Wow.
What? I mean, they literally sent plane tickets to the entire family to be flown to a convention so they could hand her the big check on stage at their conference. At the same time, she applies to her first college. because you don't have to wait until senior year. A lot of colleges have open or year-round enrollment. You can just fill out the form and check the box as to which semester you plan to begin. She had decent stats. She didn't have a perfect GPA or a perfect SAT or ACT score, but she had some nice things. And I knew it would be at least the bottom end of their scholarship levels for that school. So she applied. 3 days later, we got a phone call from the school, and the gentleman said, "We received your daughter's application, but did not receive the application fee." Now I'm thinking, great, that's following directions. But then he continues, "And we'd like to offer her tuition, fees, room, board, and books. But we need the fee to process the scholarship." Now I have my daughter on speakerphone. We're doing this by speaker, and she's about to jump up and down for joy. And I'm doing the timeout, not just yet, because I'm thinking he made a mistake, because this doesn't happen. First of all, an application without the fee is going to sit on somebody's desk, never to see the light of day. How would I know the fee wasn't paid? No one calls you. This does not happen. So my next question is, you do know she's a junior? Yes, ma'am. We'll wait for her.
Wow.
There was something in this application, something that made them sit up and take notice, something that said, we want her on our campus.
Right.
Now, she applied to 8 colleges, public and private, across 3 states. We heard similar things from many of the schools. As a matter of fact, one of the schools she turned down called afterwards to ask, what can we do to get you to come here? And then they added to what they had already offered. So there was something that we didn't quite figure out. What did we do right? Well, my son is 5 years younger. So can we do this again? Can we duplicate this thing? Sure enough, same results. It until, probably a year or so after my son went off to college, that I started getting phone calls and emails and text messages from friends or friends of friends or family asking, what did you do? My kid is a freshman. My kid is a sophomore. What do we have to do to make this happen for us? And I found myself copying and pasting. This is what we did. This is the timeline. Do this, do it just like this, etc.
Right.
So at some point, I realized I need to take this online. I want more families to understand that it's the belief systems that are keeping our kids in debt. We have to change it. We have to get the right information out there. Right. And that's how I brought it online. I love helping families be able to make this work, because anybody can do this.
What's amazing about what you're sharing is the fact that, for many parents, those that are more capable of, they start setting aside money for college funds and stuff like that, which has its own set of limitations and stuff, ever since the child is little. And what you're describing is something that's done in a much shorter time frame, and the results are oftentimes much bigger than a college fund could provide. And it's also giving a sense of responsibility to the child themselves as well in the process, so that they from early on learn the value of money, the value of education, and going after all of those things. That's something that you will not get that if you just show up and somebody writes a check for you for your college and you never knew where that came from. So it's really important. It just puts a whole different dimension on education, basically.
Well, and here's one thing to realize too, Dr. L, is that, yeah, I applaud a family that puts money aside for their kids to go to school. Every 3 to 5 years, that thought crossed my mind and then went right out to the other side. We never put away a dime for a college fund. Right. Now, looking back on it, although everyone will say we couldn't save money for college, I call BS on that for the vast majority of families. And here's why. Got a cell phone? You don't need the highest plan. You don't need the one that costs $1,000. Got a cable package? There's probably a lower one than the one you've got. What about that federal bonus that comes at the end of every year that we call a tax refund? Most of us, including me, we had that puppy spent long before that check came in. There are a lot of opportunities to save money for our kids to go to school and to help them learn the value of money and the value of budgeting and saving for later, delaying that gratification. We're just not doing that. That's not how our society works. Right. So there's a lot of things to be learned from that. But those families who either scrimped and saved to do this, or the families who have worked throughout their life, built up their business, and have the income to be able to pay for their kids to go to school. Two things on that, Dr. L. Number one, I don't know about you, but when I was in college, the kids that flunked out the first year were the ones who did not have a financial investment on their own. They're the ones who played and lost their scholarships the very first year. Number two, wouldn't you rather buy your kid a house at graduation instead of paying for a certificate?
Yep. Absolutely. These are some mindset shifts that if parents start thinking about it ahead, the results and the outcomes could literally affect the young adults that is your child and the quality of life they get to have for the rest of their life as they start their own families, basically, and not repeating similar mistakes, similar challenges that you have to encounter, paying debts off and things like that. The list goes on. Of course, our interview is short. So I know that you have had presentations on this where you go into the details of the numbers and how foundational these things are. So anybody who has the opportunity, definitely contact Denise, get in touch with her, get through some of these details. So you really see the impact that this little decision can make, not only in your life, but also in your children's life and even your grandkids' life, basically. And I know that you, not recently now, but you have become a grandmom, and I've seen some of those pictures, are adorable. So tell us, how can people connect with you and find out more about the stuff that you talk about?
Well, I would love to get in touch with your audience and help them to strategize. What is it that they can do for their own kids? And of course, the earlier, the better. The good news is there's no such thing as too late either. Scholarships begin as early as kindergarten and go all the way through professional school. So the money is out there. They can reach me by going to getaheadoftheclass.com. And we're going to have the link in the chat specific to a scholarship checklist called Scholarship Secrets. So don't apply to a scholarship without checking off every one of these particular points.
Right. And I also want to mention, don't rule this out. Sometimes international students can actually benefit from these things, as you've mentioned some of the testimonials from international students. So whether it is domestic or international, definitely reach out to Denise. She has resources and access to support in ways that you might not actually even be aware of. So it's always good to connect. It's actually a good thing to teach our kids that we don't have to do all the lifting ourselves. We have to reach out for support, and the fact that, connecting to people is a normal and healthy part of life. And the best way to do that is by role modeling it. So I encourage you guys to go into the description of the video, look at all the links, the amazing stuff that Denise has provided. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you click subscribe so you get notified of the latest developments in the channel, and hear about all the experts that come here sharing their expertise and gifts in this particular case, and go from there. Denise, you are amazing. I always enjoy having a conversation with you, and thank you for being here, taking time out of your busy day. Any final words for our audience members before we finish?
It doesn't matter how old your child is or how young. If a higher education is on the table for your children, get started. The sooner you do, the more opportunities there are for your child. college doesn't have to be a debt sentence.
I love that. And I like that play on the words too. So thank you. I appreciate you guys. See you again. Cheers.